Okay, so I was linked this Reddit post, apparently by Almo, who we have all definitely poked fun at over time. Um, but apparently he had some good takes here on why so many multiplayer asymmetrical games fail. And I figured since I was streaming, I would just record this for YouTube because this is very interesting to me. So let us start. Disclaimer, after 6 fun years of working on DBD with an amazing team, I moved on to another studio to work on something new. He was working on it for 6 years? Dude, he's been there for way longer than I thought. These opinions are mine and not those Behavior Interactive. First, it's extremely hard to set up an asymmetric game of any kind that works. That is extremely true. From a game design perspective, you're not able to assume that any rule fair to one side is fair to the other. Worse, asym horror games tend to put multiple players against one. There are a whole host of reasons this is difficult to get right, but that's a huge topic better left in another discussion. Oh, I was kind of hoping you would talk about that. That's a huge, huge topic. With regard to games that set out to compete with DBD, they often start by saying, we're going to fix X, which is a deep problem with DBD. Why not learn from competition, right? Well, sometimes it turns out that X is something that makes DBD work. There are definitely a lot of elements of truth to that. You were a VHS early adopter and a superfan, large DLC purchase. I'll use this one as an example. So I know why VHS fell, but let's see if he knows. Much of the discussion of how this game works comes from my 110 hours spent with the game, as well as discussions with my Twitch audience. VHS failed in large part because the monster couldn't tunnel or camp. Interesting that he's going there, huh? He couldn't tunnel or camp. It's funny that I'm reading this on my Nemesis approved tunneling day on stream. Failed in a large part because the monster couldn't tunnel or camp. So in my opinion, the reason VHS failed is due to the slow trickle of players and the complete lack of matchmaking. Any new player that was onboarded and tried to learn the game went against absolute gods and got shit on immensely quickly and fucking hated it because of that. That's the same reason games like Deceive Inc. also died. And I feel like that was a huge component to it. Additionally, it wasn't as intuitive for a new player to learn the game. Once you learned the game, it was actually pretty fun and in-depth, but that learning curve was too high. The learning curve was way too high, and the players that you went against were too strong because there was no matchmaking for the early beta, and you were just getting shit on by, people probably like Almo that had more hours than most people that were going against it. So I think the learning curve to VHS was the main issue. Because just from watching that game, I have no fucking idea what's going on. It's incredibly confusing to what's actually happening. When you watch DBD, it's like, oh, okay, that guy's trying to kill me. He's running around wood. I get it. I see what's happening. So a new player can get into the mindset of why people play the game. But for me, it was just too complicated, and new player onboarding was very, very rough. But let's go on and see what he says. But that meant that the monster ended up fighting 4 teens most of the match, and there was no way to deal with a particularly difficult teen. You'd finally kill one, and they get the Book of the Dead, and you're at 4 again. Oh, there was a way to res a character in that game? Yeesh. It was miserable to play Monster, so few did. I'm a DBD killer main. I even gave up playing Monster because it was so miserable to play. I'd rather wait in a 15-minute teen queue than play something in the meantime than deal with that. Okay, so it sounds like he was getting bullied as killer in that game, and that's a bad feeling, which it just objectively is, not to like make fun of Almo or anything. Getting bullied in a game like that feels terrible. The difficulty in killing one teen early also made the 25-minute matches feel very samey the whole time. DBD matches have 4 phases. 4 survivors, 3 survivors. Do we try to finish gens or hatch, jockey, hatch, hunt? That results in large shifts in playstyle over the course of one match. There are issues with some of these stages, but that they are present adds variety to each match. So he's kind of like hinging his analysis here based on the fact that camping and tunneling are good, which is certainly a take. I don't think the concept of it in general is necessarily bad. It's just the way that it's handled is bad in DBD. There was also the ping system, another response to something DBD is perceived to be lacking. It hurt the atmosphere and made it much more gamey. Okay, well, I have to disagree with you here. DBD has been a game for 8 years now. It has not been the spooky, horror, immersive genre thing for almost the entirety of its lifespan. As soon as the cosmetic store was added, that shit went out the window. So I completely disagree with this point. That the atmosphere and the horror factor of DBD only matters for the first week you play it. And then it's just a fun game of tag. It's not really... That does not matter at all. I agree that does hurt the atmosphere, but the atmosphere was hurt when you added fucking neon skins. Like that's long gone. Horror is not. This game is not a horror anymore. It's a horror-themed action chase game. It's not an asymmetrical horror game, if that makes sense. It has changed drastically from when it first came out. If you even look at the first clips of DBD, like when the game was brand new, even the visual atmosphere in the game was vastly different. Everything was much darker, and it was creepier. It was much creepier. But yeah, again, that's just gone. We have daylight maps now, completely gone. So that's irrelevant. I don't think that matters whatsoever. It meant teens had a much easier time learning to coordinate against the monster. Yeah, but if you look at the data of solo queue, we need survivors to have more coordination. The shittiest kill rate is like 50-something%, and the highest ones are like 67, 68% on Nightlight. The game statistically is leaning towards killer right now at the moment. Not by too much, but it is leaning towards killer. And I know it can feel like that's not the case if you get a good squad. I get it. But I really advise you to measure all of your matches and count how many times you win as killer. If you're even remotely decent, you're winning more than you're losing. You just are. So, I think that's a weird thing to focus on because solo queue is the weakest role in the game. I think even killer-sided people would agree that solo queue is the weakest role in the game. Like, if you're a killer main and you switch to solo queue survivor, you're just like, oh my god, get me out of here. It's rough. So improving that experience and not buffing survivor with friends, why would you be opposed to that? That doesn't really make any sense. Sounds like Elmo is a sweaty killer main that is upset about survivors having basic functions that they would already have in a 4-man. It makes no sense to me. So far, we'll continue reading. I want to be fair. Then there were journeys. These were sets of challenges for players to earn stuff. Nice in principle, but some of these encouraged very bad behavior on part of the teens. Yeah, but that exists in DBD too. What the fuck? The people literally throw matches to finish challenges in this game. That's a point against DBD too, though. Imagine you're losing as the monster. Teens have one more sigil of the 4 to take to win. Instead, they keep chain stunning you on the other attacks in order to fulfill their journey requirements. They're encouraged not to win, but to bully the monster for their unlocks. We can't fault the players. They're just behaving the way the systems encourage. Yeah, but the exact same problem is on the other side. It makes it so you bully your own teammates by being fucking useless and trying to get 3 pallet stuns on whatever or something like that. This seems like he said he was a killer main. But this seems incredibly killer-sided so far, which is very silly, because if you're a developer of the game, you can't be anything-sided.
Crazy to think I found you from an upgrade by the Obel Legion, and you were thrashing on our Legion. It's been a good ride.
Thank you, Chig. This reeks of being one-sided, which is not what you can be when you're a developer for DBD. You need to be completely neutral. The thing he's mentioning here is an exact problem, but for the survivors. It's the exact same problem, but because it doesn't affect the killer, he doesn't mind it. That is so killer-sided. Like, you need to be neutral. VHS challenges were ingrained for progress, not optional, and were much more direct with the bullying. Couldn't you make the argument that you're still progressing your tome or whatever? You're still making progression towards something that you want to earn, so no, I don't agree with that. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm saying it's the same thing for DBD. There's still a form of progression that requires you to do these things, that require you basically to throw the game for the survivor side. So it's the challenges being in the game are a survivor side or a killer-sided mechanic, because survivors will throw and do dumb shit in order to do that. Progression as in perks levels, not cosmetics. Yeah, but you get blood points and cells as well for the same thing. So isn't that effectively the same exact type of thing we're talking about here? And also you get a shit ton of blood points for doing glyphs and stuff like that. You get them also by not doing them. I get what you're saying. Like you're saying the only way you can do that particular thing is through the challenges. I'm just saying right now, I see almost every game someone throwing to get a challenge done. So you're making the argument that it's more present in VHS because it's required to do these things, but it's so present in DBD too that I don't think it's a strong argument. It's like almost every other game that someone's doing some dumb shit for a challenge. And so I get where you're coming from, but I don't think that's a good counter argument. Part of this issue stems from another thing. Minor spelling mistake. From another thing they wanted to fix from DBD. We want more interaction between the killer and survivors, and we'd like to be able to hinder the killer more than we can in DBD. Yeah, hindering the killer is definitely an L. Being able to like attack the killer, damage the killer, stun lock them, things like that, that is never really good. You don't want that in your game. One reason DBD works is that the survivors try to do gens to open the gates and the killer tries to stop them. It's never about stopping the killer, but delaying them until you can get the gates open. I fundamentally agree with that. In VHS, the teens want to kill the monster and the monster wants to kill the teens. Yeah, I agree. I agree. The killer being able to be killed like that, Friday the 13th, anything like that, that is not good. Anytime you can aggressively like kill the killer, stun lock the killer, Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the door spam, you guys remember that from the early days, all of that kind of shit where the killer loses agency over the game entirely. Yes, that is a recipe for failure. And even I've made videos about this topic there where, yeah, that's a very, very bad decision. You don't want to be able to like damage the killer in any way. That is very frustrating. In VHS teams, all right, just read that. I would argue that the goal structure being set up like this means DBD can give the most important things to the players, the sense of an unstoppable killer. True. When I boot in the game as killer, I don't want to be afraid that there might be a survivor lurking around the corner with a weapon. I want to go in and watch them scatter like rabbits when I come near. Yeah, I can agree with that. That brings up what's called Luto narrative dissonance. It's when you see VHS or DBD advertised, you're being sold 80s movie monster runs around murdering civilians. That is true. That is what the ads advertise. What you get in DBD is largely that. No, you don't. No, the fuck you don't. I'm sorry. I completely and fundamentally disagree with that. That goes away in like 5 days. This is just not DBD anymore. I'm sorry. There's just neon people running around from a K-pop star. It's just, no, that's just gone. All the maps are bright now. It's just, fucking Nicolas Cage is in the game. Shut up. This is so long gone that I just laugh at people that like are like, you're harming the horror part of the game. It's literally I'm sorry. It's just, it is so far gone from that. You get it in a sense of mechanically, killer doesn't die nor to struggle to survive. Right, but you also realize that the killer is not a killer. It's a dude, it's some sweaty dude playing a video game. As long as it's an online component, it's not a killer. It's a guy playing a game against you. It's a competitive online game in that scenario. So no, I'm sorry, that does not exist anymore. That existed in 2016 when the game was first created and it was first announced and was first advertised. Does not exist in 2025. It's just completely gone. Again, other than like the first few days that someone plays the game, then yes, it is definitely a horror aspect game. Unless they got the game because they're watching like montages and stuff like that, then they're going to have a different perspective. But someone that's sort of blind to the game's history, like a Five Nights at Freddy's fan that might purchase the game for the first time, hasn't looked into it at all, they might treat it truly like a horror game for like the first week. They're going to go against Springtrap, they're going to have a great time, they're going to be, all great. And then they're just going to start realizing it's a video game, and then that goes away. So that's never really something that's focused on too much, in my opinion. Thanks, up too late. That's DBD, that's largely what you get. Yeah, I disagree. And VHS is considerably harder to kill individual teens, and so you're not getting what you were sold. You may have a difficult time actually completing kills in DBD as it's difficult to learn to play. But that's a totally different feeling than what you get in VHS, where so many systems and rules are set up to make it systemically difficult to kill a teen. I can agree with that. It's easy to give reasons like DBD has the licenses, or it has more content, or it's already established as reasons for competitive failures. Those are all factors, but he's right that they're not like the main thing, or that they didn't market it right, or that the early access was not done well. I mean, that's just objectively true for VHS. VHS shipped with 3 monsters, 6 teens, and 3 maps. Over the course of their 1-year early access, they released 2 monsters, 1 teen, and 2 maps. They tweaked a lot of things and listened to player feedback. It was impressive for such a small team. My experience as someone who was on the DBD team for 6 years and having played VHS and Evil Dead quite a lot is that these competitors just aren't as much fun. Like it or not, despite its flaws, DBD is a brilliant game that's just fun to play, and competitors have to beat that part to survive. Focusing on DBD's flaws and fixing those first is the wrong way about it. Oh, okay. He's saying from a competitor side. I thought he was saying for DBD. Focusing on fixing DBD's flaws is not the main problem. He's saying if there's a competitor, they shouldn't set out to make a game with the prime focus of fixing what DBD does wrong. That's what he's saying. I'm never happy when a fellow game developer slave away in a game for years and then fail and lose their jobs. They worked hard, they cared about their game, and it's clear they put everything into it. Studio behind VHS unfortunately appears to be gone now, and that's a shame. It seems like this is mostly just about VHS and not really anything else. He said it was about ASIM games, but he just talked about VHS here. So yeah, this some of these things he says is completely true. Some of them are definitely living in some sort of fantastical world where that's just not reality anymore. And I think a lot of this is very bizarrely killer-sided. It's very bizarrely killer-sided. So much so that he brings up something that specifically is the exact same problem as in VHS, but it only affects survivors, and then he views that as not a problem anymore. It's so strange to me to have a dev be very blatantly one-sided. That is not what the dev should be. They should be abundantly neutral entirely, play 50-50. I feel like that's like a damn near requirement, but let's actually look at the comments. I think you need the game to be killer-sided. I agree. I think it should lean a little bit towards the killer. I completely agree with that. I'm just saying, from a mindset perspective, for him to introduce that argument, and then it's sort of hypocritical to introduce that argument and then have it favor survivors, and he's just like, or have it favor the killer, and I think it's fine. I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying. But I personally noticed watching this game evolve over time and how other games try to copy it boils down to how much can the survivors fight back against the killers. Yes, very, very, very true. Early DBD has infinites and stupidly broken perks that made a lot of the matches really difficult, so what happened? Nurse happened. And everyone quickly realized that was a step way too far in the other thing, or direction, and things started to get changed and nerfed gradually, sometimes drastically. So this is a really interesting point, that DBD at the very start was basically just as problematic. Now, you couldn't kill the killer, but you could kill their spirit. You could run an infinite for 2 hours and mentally make them check out. So you could damage the player basically in the exact same way. And it was a problem. What's weird is that DBD didn't die. And I solely think that's because there was just nothing else like it. There was literally zero competition. There was like Evolve, which is more action-based and not quite the same thing. But there was basically nothing like DBD, so there was no other options. So even though they had the same problems, they started with like 10k players, and they sort of rode 10k players for like a couple of years, actually. It didn't really ever go down, which is kind of impressive. And I'm sure like getting Myers and stuff like aided with that, but they maintained that player base for a surprising amount of time despite the game being virtually unplayable for killer. Most people didn't recognize and abuse OP shit to no end back then. True, in the first couple of months, people didn't even know how to abuse infinites yet. Early DBD had infinites and stupidly broken perks. Oh, I just read that. Other games see ways to stun the killer, but not all the progress and mistakes that come to that conclusion. Instead of trying to run loops with limited obstacles to block a killer's path, they give them tons of weapons, tanky health bars, plethora of healing supplies. Yeah, I agree. This is all not going to be good. Rapidly turns into a completely different experience. Yep. Dead by Daylight is fun because the killers have so many unique abilities and traits that force you to play differently and use your limited resources depending on the situation versus other games where most of your gameplay is wailing on the killer until you die because there's little else for you to do. Is DBD the perfect asymmetrical game? God, no, but they learned how to make one fun and engaging, albeit also ridiculously frustrating. That's why it's alive while all the others are dead. But shut the fuck up. But yeah, no, I agree with basically everything like I said. It is funny, though. This was the very first example of one of the main problems I have with behavior, with fixing problems with additions to the game rather than new base mechanics. Like, oh, there's infinites, so clearly we should patch the infinites. Nah, nurse, go through walls. Like, come on. That's the way you're fixing the infinites? You just add something else that you have to get? Like, that is pretty funny, though. Oh, yeah, we can go to Q&A mode to see his responses. That's right. Forgot this was the thing. Playing alone in an asymmetrical game, though, is inherently stressful, and playing on a team is more casual. Survivor side, that is true. Survivor side is going to be attracting a lot more players because it's casual. Most people are playing the game are casual. Then when it's playing killer or just alone, everything is on you all the time. Killer inherently needs to be easy, fun, and strong to play, or else people won't want to play. I don't think these games work very well if they are balanced. If you're playing as a killer and don't feel like you can do anything, then yeah, you're not going to want to play. Another thing is nice in DBD that killers naturally get stronger as the game goes on because survivors run out of resources. They can't stay there and try to bully the killer forever. It's just a nice feeling. Oh, you got pounced on and blinded, but you can't die, so that doesn't matter. And now they have one less pallet on the map. Yeah, it's definitely true that the game needs to lean a little bit towards survivor. But when you bring up an element like that, where you're talking about you don't want the killer to feel helpless, because that's a really shitty feeling. The thing is, I completely agree with that, but at the same time, what about the survivor that's getting tunneled by a blight or something? They also feel completely helpless as well in the exact same way. I'm sorry, lean towards killer, not survivor. And so that's problematic on the other side. But you do have 4 survivors, so it still feels like there's less stress on you, but that helpless feeling I think that helpless feeling is the single greatest negative emotion in the entire game for both sides. The helpless feeling as killer as a survivor gets a god window and Garden of Joy, and the helpless feeling as survivor when a killer that is way too good at tunneling tunnels you off the hook and you can't really do much else. That helpless feeling is the worst feeling. So it's cool to see everybody hone in on that as one of the main topics for the reasons these games like don't do well. It's that helpless feeling, and minimizing that helpless feeling as much as possible is key. And DBD over time has done that a lot, giving base kit BT, giving a shit ton of perks that help you with getting tunneled. And for the killer side, being able to deal with the things survivors are able to do, and nerfing maps, adding entity blocker, and all the stuff that they've made better for killer. Like they're doing work on that for sure. It just seems like it takes a while. Well, that wasn't a very good response. Very well spoken. Appreciate seeing perspective behind how specifically DBD has been designed. Despite many criticisms, these past few months feel like behavior generally has a fantastic grasp on the state of the game, merely struggling with keeping all the necessary boxes checked. These would be things to be touched on from the survivor skill expression to balance queue times. Right now, I feel like from the perspective of a lower tier killer, Clown Main, that the game has been more frustrating for me than it has been in a very long time. I'm trying to think when's the last time be more frustrating than now, because like a couple years ago we had Colorblind Eruption Overcharge. Even though Clown received amazing changes during early 2024 and hook timers getting increased to 70 seconds, now losing or tying against teams where you seldom have a chance to chase every survivor even if I wanted to because of the imbalanced proportionality between chase and generator times. 4,000 hours on one specific killer, yet are struggling against survivors who had 1/4 of your hours, since it's virtually impossible to keep up with the objective if you play Costa perfectly. Margin for error is so slim that it makes me all the more hypercritical of my mistakes. All this coupled with the abuse that survivors frequently throw your way whenever I lose has conditioned a very negative psychological response towards lost matches. It's shit like this makes me think to myself, none of this would be happening if you spent your time playing a killer like Nurse or Blight. None of this would be happening if I was playing a different game entirely. I mean, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on how behavior might address the performance disparity between killers on the higher and lower ends of the spectrum? I feel like, especially with the nerfs to some regression, slowdown perks, the base get changed to be in order. Also wish there was some way to systemically behavior could encourage people on both sides to be kinder to each other. Yeah, me too. I think it's toxicity following lost matches that contributes to a large part of toxicity as a whole, snowballing across gaming communities. I swear to God, am I on some magic server where my matches are just easier? Like I have like an 80% win rate on like the worst killers in the game. It's just not that bad. And I'm not like some comp god. I'm just like above average at the game. Whatever. Let's not hone in on that part. Addressing toxicity is difficult, but time spent doing it is worthwhile. I am not sure what could be done. Social systems aren't my specialty. Glad you like clown stuff. Did much of the work on the yellow bottle update. I don't think the hook timer should go up, but that wasn't up to me at the time. Of course you don't, Elmo. You want to face camp. The rationale was sensible, but I'm not sure it had an overall good effect. Hard to say without looking at the data. I think it had a good effect. Make a living out of this. Most players aren't that good. The dude that has 4,000 hours in Clown, he should be winning almost every one of his matches. I'm sorry. Unless he's like a heckin' wholesome clown that's like 12 hooking every game, which I highly doubt it. If you have 4,000 hours in Clown, you should be winning 90% of your matches. You just should. Again, unless he's on some magical server or something. I don't know. I don't think that's an excuse just because I play this game 3 hours every other day that... I mean, it's Clown? Yeah, Clown's chase is still pretty decent. Oh, I mean, he's not a very good killer. He's like very low B tier, but I don't know. I still feel like if you have 4,000 hours in a certain killer, you should be able to have a 90% win rate with them. Only plays at midnight when the Sweat Lord comes out. That is possible. If he only plays like super late at night, because the only factor I found for increased sweat was like from 1 to 5 in the morning. That is actually when the games are notably harder. So if that's the case, then yeah, that's probably a bit more rough. One issue as you get better as killer is how matchmaking works to keep queue times down. When you're near the bottom of the skill cap, you start getting matched with survivors from above it. Those matches are hard, and your win rate will go down for a time. Eventually, when you get past that, the matchmaker will throw mixed survivor groups at you, or some are at cap and some are above, leaving you possibly against a much worse group than you. And the kill rate starts to go up as you get better beyond that point. With your amount of playtime, I recommend playing more Survivor. Damn. Get fucked, Clown Main. Almo, the killer main, is telling you go play more Survivor. I mean, it's good advice. I'm not going to lie. It is genuinely good advice. If you want to get better at killer, playing Survivor is, like, actually good advice. The best way to get good at one role is to play the other. Also play more killers. It's easier to know how to use the killer's strong points if you're more aware of them from playing without them. Dude, Almo kind of based. What the fuck? What else we got? Looking for other responses. I'm looking for like other like long responses, not him just saying oh thanks or whatever, you know what I mean? Holy. Hey, I ain't reading all that. Do I miss old DB? No, it was miserable for killer. What? I'm just trying to look if there's any other points of contention to talk about here. It's funny because Evil Dead is a much better game design than DBD. It only failed because of no support. I can't comment on this because I never played it. Anyone that played Evil Dead? What's your take on that? Yeah, I'm just not going to chime in on that. I don't really know. I'm looking for longer responses from Albo, not from random people on Reddit. I did. It sucked. Okay. Fair enough. Oh, yeah. It was Epic Games only. That's right. Why'd this guy get so downvoted for such a decent question? What do you think DBD needs now more than ever for balance and fun? Survivor skill expression has gone down significantly, and I feel like a universal buff for the entire side is due. Any thoughts on this? Oh, that's why. Because he asked for a universal Survivor buff. See, you know what? I think I would agree with that. I actually would agree with downvoting that because Survivor does not need a universal buff. It's solo queue that needs a buff. The concept of Survivor in general doesn't need a buff. But solo queue needs a buff for sure. But you don't want to buff Survivor with friends. That's not the right thing either. Because like the hierarchy is solo queue, killer, 2 to 3 man, and then 4-man Survivor with friends. That's like typically how the hierarchy goes. So you don't want to buff all survivors because then the guys up top here are going to be just doing even better. So you just need to work on things like communication, UI elements, things like that. So solo queue got buffed with a shit. Yeah, it did. It did. This game isn't skillful. That's because you're a disgusting Survivor main, guys. Try playing a real killer like Nemesis. I bet you can't do that. All right. If Survivor skill expression is too large, the game will fail. I think this is worded weirdly. I think it's more accurate to say if the Survivor skill floor is too large, the game will fail. Not skill expression in general. Because skill expression is the only thing that keeps people playing games. If the skill floor is too high, then it stops them from starting the game to begin with. But if one survivor has enough tools to defeat the killer, you certainly can't send 4 of them against the killer. Yeah, but what if the killer has the tools to defeat the survivors? They should both have the tools to defeat each other. Fundamentally, chases should be a survivor wasting as much time as possible before going down so other survivors can do gens. Except in extremely mismatched circumstances, survivors shouldn't be able to go on 2-minute chases. I can agree with that. If you're chasing someone for 2 minutes, something has gone wrong. Either the guy is way better than you and you shouldn't be playing against these players. Either the map is utterly busted, you just are bad at killer and don't know how to abandon a chase when it's clearly going to be a bad one. So I agree. You should never be on a 2-minute chase under any circumstance. There was a time when killer frustration was high and kill rates were going down. Survivor queue time started going up because killers were leaving. That was when we did that massive update that included some across-the-board killer buffs. So we already know what it's like when Survivor skill expression is too strong. I still feel like he's focusing on skill expression, not skill floor. Skill floor and skill expression are two different things. You want an extremely good Survivor to be able to show that he's extremely good. You also want a brand new player to still be able to hold their own for a little while until they kind of learn more. Trick's hitting the right balance. Remember that for every 1 killer player that quits, that's 4 unserviced Survivor players. That's true. When killers start leaving, queue times suffer almost immediately. My opinion, the team needs to shift to supporting existing content over producing new content. Live service games need to make this change eventually in their lives. LoL did this very well. They used to release a new champion every 2 weeks. Now it's like a few a year. But they're constantly fixing and updating existing content. Doesn't matter who you play. I never feel left behind. Yeah, that's rough, man. Because they can't monetize that really. Oh, I see Helix. Actually, base take. I mean, yeah, like I agree with what he's saying that they should focus on their existing content, but as I've said before, I don't think they can afford to do that. This is literally their only successful game. They can't afford to just not have new things for a while. Yeah, I've always said the only way they could do this is if they do a massive cosmetic release at the same time. So there'll be 6 months with new killer, but like at the 3rd month marker, holy shit, every killer has a new Mori you can buy now or something like that. They would need to do a massive cosmetic drop, like with a new thing entirely, like a new emote for survivors or new Moris for every killer or just shit like that. They could make bank if they did that. Could you imagine if they added a new emote to survivors? They would make $1 million on the first day. So they can absolutely have a period of time without new content, but they need to monetize it very well, and I don't know if they're going to do that because they seem just slow as shit with that stuff. On the flip side, it is a massive gamble because if you spend a bunch of time working on things like that, and you spend a bunch of time operation healthing the game, your player base is going to go down drastically. During that time, it's going to nosedive. It's going to go down to like it's going to go from like 40 to 30 or 25K players. No new content. It's just down. So we're going to be at a new low for a while. And we're all hinging it on the fact that the behavior development team actually nails everything and does everything right. So we're all just taking a giant gamble that this 6 months of no content is actually even going to work. Because if it doesn't, it will just straight kill the game. Because then that'll be 6 months with the player base declining. Everyone comes back to check it out, and it's just as bad. Then, yeah, that will be like a nail in the coffin. So it's a huge risk to do something like that. So I understand why they haven't done it, but I don't know. When seasons and years of overall killer buffs and survivor nerfs, I've noticed survivor players are not enjoying the game as much, and in fact have been DCing at a higher rate than normal. Very true. I have a strong gut feeling that they are closely related. I even truly believe Gen should go to 85 seconds instead of 90, or just straight back to 80 with killer action speed buffs. What are your thoughts? Good question. I wish I had a better answer. I feel like certain aspects of survivor play need to be adjusted, notably flashlight and flashbang play. The consequences of 1 or 2 successful events for the survivor are so huge that they need to be rare. Okay, this is literally just fucking soy killer main talk. We need to nerf flashlights. Oh, Elmo. This is the dude that was in charge of balancing DBD. It's a guy who couldn't fucking turn 45 degrees in a different angle. This is why I set up sabotage the way it is now. It's very consequential anytime it works, so if it works too often, it's going to make killers hate life and leave. Didn't they just fucking massively buff like Alex's toolboxes? On a side note, when I worked coming up with the current version, it was meant to make it a quick decision when the opportunity presents itself, rather than a long-term strategic play of 99ing all hooks in an area. DBD is supposed... Oh, maybe he's talking about that change. DBD is supposed to be a game of fast thinking, and I felt it fit better. If they were to limit flashlight blinds and flashlight blinds somehow, or flashbang blinds somehow, they could shift some power back into survivor play elsewhere. Dude, could you imagine making flashlights even weaker? They are borderline useless. How many times have been flashlight saved in the past? I mean, I'm not saying I never get flashlight saved, but every single time, it's 100% my fault. I'm looking at chat, I just look at a guy and just let it happen. I don't look at the lobby and that, like, every time I get blinded, it is 100% my fault for playing bad. Like, every single time. Flashlights are shit. Unless you're in, like, a 4-man sweat squad with, like... on like rotten fields or something, there's a very few exceptions where the map is wide open and you actually can't face any walls anywhere. Very few exceptions, but for the most part, flashlights are pretty shit. And not only are they shit, they're a detriment to Survivor a lot of the time because they just get people killed. I think that applies to flashbangs as well. Flashbangs are even harder to use. You need to be even closer to the killer when that happens. And yes, I completely think that applies to flashbangs as well. Flashlights you can do from a decent distance away, so it's actually like they can be further away than you can detect, so it's more feasible that they do that. Flashlights need to be like right fucking next to you when they run up. Even with background player, you need to be like right next to them. So yeah, I don't think that at all. Now, flashlight, the sounds need to be fixed because that's stupid. Them not making sound is dumb. I 100% think that needs to be fixed. Flashbangs work when you look up, though. They only work when you look up if they are directly in the center of your hitbox, which is nigh impossible to do unless it's like under a hook or something like that. That is usually not really an issue. I'm sorry. If you have a problem with flashlights or flashbangs, it is legit skill issue. Also, if you're really, really that opposed to them, just put on fucking Lightborn. The fact that he wants to nerf flashlights even more is... Dude, that's what I'm saying. That is a massive self-report. Holy shit. Like, flashlights are useless 90% of games to anyone that's even, like, okay at Dead by Daylight. You don't even have to be amazing. You don't need to be a person that plays every day for a living or something. Just, like, before you pick someone up, just look around and just turn a different direction. It's just not hard. You don't even need a wall most of the time. I think it would become less of a crapshoot regarding whether or not the killer's perks ruin your day or not. I run Lightboard 80% of my message. Okay. And survivors come in with 4 flashlights. As soon as they find out I can't be blinded, their whole strategy fails. Oh, the whole strategy falls apart. And then they gen rush you and you lose. Cool. I feel like if I didn't feel like flashlights were too powerful, I wouldn't run Lightborn, and then they'd have a better shot of playing that strategy. One could argue Lightborn is too powerful. Holy Giga Chad. But what I know about flashlights leads me to believe that Lightborn is needed to be as is. It's one of my designs. I updated it to be 100% immunity. Dude, that is so funny. Literally can't fucking turn around, so he buffs Lightborn to make it immune. That is so funny. That is like strong Makote getting insta-blinded energy and then instantly changing it because he hated that thing specifically. That is so funny. That comment is literally a skill issue. I mean, yeah, it is. That is really funny. One last question. DBD feels like it's more balanced yet less fun. I could agree with that a little bit. I could get specific, but what's your 2 cents on this statement? Okay. When it was unbalanced, players weren't happy about it. They think they were, but if we brought back an old version, say 2.0, they find out pretty far how come. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. Game has come a very, very long way. Now that it is balanced better, they think the before times were better. This is a very common misconception, and not just in games. People always say things like, things were better when, not remembering all the bad plays. That is completely true as well. Negativity bias is massive in this community. As I play DBD now, the absolute shit ton of improvements we've made are very present in my experience, but I think of games differently as I play them, being a very analytical game designer. I cannot read. I've been talking a lot the past 30 minutes, sorry. Do people want hook grabs back? Do they not remember when the hooks stand off when survivors would tap to unhook, hoping to draw the attacks to get the real unhook? I feel like I'm the only guy that enjoyed the grab mini game. I don't know why I like that as killer. Like trying to like predict when they're gonna grab and then grab them on their fake grab is just like I don't know why I like that. It's objectively a good decision to remove it, but I like that. It was dumb, but I liked it. Watch the hatch standoff back. It used to be when an item was out of charge, you lost it. This encouraged 99ing the item to keep it. It's a dumb mechanic. Should be removed baseline borrowed time. You just wanted to sneak that one in there. All these are like, yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Let me immediately tunnel off hook again. Just slid that one in there. The way this is being formatted is making this increasingly hard to read. Talking about last year. Yeah, last year died because of the Discord store. That's it. You don't need to read anything else. You've got the key point here. Other ASIMs fail due to favoring the many over the one. The survivors over the killer. Some further examples. Last year, too many tools to harass the killer, too easy to bring back fallen teammates. Hide or die, too much focus on tedious hiding. Predator, fire teams can easily chip away at the predator who can't easily kill them. Evolve, either the hunters found the monster early and killed it easier, or spent 15 minutes tracking it only to be wiped by its final form. I don't remember Evolve enough to comment on it. Evil Dead, Demon has to spend too long gathering resources only to be easily pushed back by groups of well-equipped survivors. TCM, famous Stunlock Simulator, I do remember that. Worries that DBD is going to be going the same way. Tunneling is very much discouraged through related perks. Camping has been nerfed. Gen slowdown's the weakest it's been since pre-clown. I don't know if I agree with that, but This just leaves slugging, which is soon to be gutted. Beyond this, the biggest issue with DBD is the blanket nature by which it is done. At the core, Blight and Trapper are both balanced at the same center, despite being wildly different in terms of playstyle and strength. Yeah, I agree with that. The disparity between top and bottom really ruins it. Why aren't matches naturally slower for Trapper so he has time to collect traps? It's a very good point. Why aren't there more pallets when playing against Blight? Is almost guaranteed to hit you in open spaces. Why don't we implement a pick 10 style system to limit what perks can be used together and on stronger killers? Yeah, I see. I kind of agree with that. I do think as long as we accept that is such a massive difference between S tier and D tier, that you actually should make the game slightly better. Like, the game should be slightly easier for like a Trapper or a Pig or something in some way. It's not a bad idea. I've suggested that like a while ago when they were talking about the emblem system. You need to have specific modifiers for different killers, but you may have misread why Rune was nerfed. I feel like you just kind of ignored the rest of the post there. All right, I think we're out of here. Yeah, I agree with some of the things that he was saying. Like a lot of the stuff down here, I definitely agreed with. But yeah, like talking about this stuff where it hurts the immersion, that doesn't matter anymore. Talking about things favoring the survivors being bad but favoring killers is... I'm not a fan of it. I get that the game needs to lean a bit towards killer, but it's kind of hypocritical in that scenario. And then a lot of this is very surprising to learn that he is definitely extremely killer-sided. So much so that he wants flashlights somehow nerfed more, which is just mind-blowing to me. So that does give a little bit of an insight to some of the changes we've seen so far. But yeah, there you go. Overall, it wasn't as train wrecky as I thought. I thought it was going to be way more like, I like hockey Ex-DBD, but maybe that'll be for when Patrick quits and makes a post here. But that was more sensical than I thought it would be. How disappointing. All right, thanks for watching.